Hi everyone, and welcome to How to Counter Any Shallow Objection to Turn a Crappy Conversation into a Meeting. My name is Becc Holland. I'm the head of sales development at chorus.ai. Really excited about today's session because I have with me one of our most lethal SDRs and off record one of my most personal favorites. Hope no one else is watching, Karina Erickson.
Hi everybody.
Hi, and welcome to the session.
Yeah.
Really excited to have you today.
Excited to be here.
So as far as the agenda today, I wanted to go into three different pieces. I wanted to start number one with kind of our structure of how we counter any shallow objection. Second part, I was going to ask you what are your top 5 shallow objections that you get on the phone every day. And then the third piece, I was going to go into a live role play if you're good to do it.
Sounds great.
So this, for everyone watching, this is actually an unprompted session. So she doesn't know any of the questions that are going to come at her, but I would love to kick this off with asking you some questions.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so for step number one, if I were to say to you, just everyday average situation, if I were to say, hi, how are you, Karina? What would your innate response be back?
Good, how are you?
Okay, so second question, if I were to say, thank you so much, Karina, what's your innate response back?
You're welcome.
So is it safe to say that there's kind of a code of conduct or rules of engagement around the human language that tells us what we should say back and forth to each other in a conversation?
Definitely.
Okay, so now I want to transition to sales. Do you think that applies to sales too?
100%.
Okay, so if you were to say to me on the phone, send me an email. So let's role play that. You tell me as a prospect, send me an email.
You know, it sounds great. Why don't you just send me an email?
What are you expecting for me to say back?
I'm expecting you to say, great, I will do that, and get off the phone.
Bingo. So I think most of our prospects are saying send me an email because they don't want to feel like a bad person, but they want to give us some little remote shot or make us think that we still have some kind of deal. So they say send me an email, but they're really just wanting to get off the phone. I get that right?
Exactly.
Okay, so before you came to Chorus, what was the typical counter for you as a sales rep? If I were to say send me an email, how would you try to counter that in the past?
I would counter with, what information would you like me to put in that email
Bingo.
for you to open it?
Bingo. So that's the most common objection handle that I hear in the sales development industry. And I have to ask you a tough question. I know you're on camera. Did that work for you?
It did not.
Okay, so now in my experience, same thing. It never worked for me. I would end up sending emails to my prospects and never hear back from them. So the first thing that we want to do in step number one is what's called a pattern interrupt. So a pattern interrupt is we're in that normal, what we call the buyer-seller dance. That's what Sandler selling methodology calls it too. There's a certain code of conduct around a buyer and a seller of what a buyer should do and a seller should do back. And so we want to break out of that mold, if you will, and build rapport with our buyer to book the meeting. So what we're going to use today is...
Can I level with you?
Can I level with you? So that's one out of many pattern interrupts, but it's basically going to be Karina busting out of that normal buyer-seller dance. The step 2, so elephant in the room is what I wanted to cover next. Okay, let's role play, Karina. You say to me, how are you? Hi, how are you? And I'm going to respond, and I want you to tell me what you think I'm actually saying in my response, okay?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
How are you?
I'm good.
Are you sure? You don't sound too great.
So what are you thinking that I'm feeling like as a prospector calling in?
Calling in?
Yeah, if you're calling in, what does that communicate to you as a human being?
It sounds like you're not doing well and it might not be the best time.
Bingo. So I want you to trek back to when you were before Chorus and you were a sales rep. What are you instructed to do, or how do you normally handle when someone says, yeah, I'm good? What do you normally do?
You generally ignore and continue to pitch.
Bingo. So I think the number one thing that sales development reps do on the phone, or full cycle prospectors, salespeople in general, is for some reason we slough off all of those emotional cues that we know mean something because we want to push our product. But if I were to, let's role play it again. Let's role play it where I say, hi, how are you to you? You give me the same good answer back, and then I'll give you a counter and tell me how you feel about it.
Okay.
Hi, Karina, how are you?
Good.
Can I level with you? You don't sound that good. Did I do something wrong here?
No, it's just this, and then I'll go into
how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you feel like, which case scenario do you want to buy more or less from me? If I were to roll past it and go into my pitch, or if I were to pause there for a moment and say, like, you don't sound very good?
Pausing and addressing it.
And why do you think that you want to do that?
Because it shows you actually care about your prospect.
Bingo. So it basically, I just got goosebumps. You basically show your prospect that you are understanding them. If you were to pause there with them and tell them what your best guess is as to what, based on the emotional cues, is going on. So we're going to call it an elephant in the room as far as a principle, but how we're going to leverage it today is we're going to say, I've been hearing send me an email a lot recently, and I get the feeling that means...
You just don't want to talk to me.
Go away, you annoying sales rep. Did I get that right? And look for confirmation from our prospect. The third step is going to be empathy, and we'll go into how to use that and leverage that. It's pretty straightforward. And the fourth step, we're going to end with what's called a Sandler upfront contract. There are 4 pieces to an upfront contract. There's time, agenda, commitment or outcome, and then consent. So how that's going to sound today is, how about this? You give me the next 30 seconds to give you my best dog and pony show on who Chorus is and why I thought we might be a good fit for you and your team over at Oracle. And at the end of that 30 seconds, you can tell me whether it makes sense to continue the conversation from there. Fair? So those are the 4 pieces to an upfront contract that we're going to deploy today. But first, the second part of the agenda, I wanted to, what are the top 5 objections, shallow objections? Well, first, let's take a step back. What is the, what we call the 95-5 objection rule?
The 95% of objections are not real and 5% are.
So whenever someone cold calls into you, do you, if someone cold calls into you, they walk up with maybe like a pad of paper and like a clipboard, and you typically say what to them? They're like, hey, can you sign this? And you say what?
I don't know what I'm signing. I'm not interested.
Yeah, bingo. So you kind of come up with a myriad of different objections, but you really, what do you want them to do?
Go away.
Right, so 95% of the time the objections actually aren't real, but 5% of the time they are real. And what would you say is the biggest differentiator between the objection, let's say no time, and let's say no time, like, you know, Q4, we're gonna have an RFP out for this, and, you know, call me back then. What's the difference between those two in your experience?
The level of detail.
Okay, cool. So what are the, what would you say are the 5 biggest shallow objections that you get on the phone that you have to counter all the time?
The 5 would be, I'm just not interested. I'm too busy right now. I'm in a meeting.
Yeah.
But I thought you were somebody else calling.
That's my favorite.
I'm on my way to a meeting. And then the last one is just send me an email.
Yeah, those are probably the 5 that oddly enough, that I run into the most too, is those 5 is, you really just run into someone that's trying to get off the phone with you. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's just someone who's like, get off the phone, I don't know what you do, and I don't really care. So without further ado, let's go into a live role play of, you know, how a cold call would go, and I'm gonna, give you the objection of, which one do you wanna do?
Let's do I'm running into a meeting.
I'm running into a meeting. Perfect. Okay, the premise that we always do personalized outreach over here at Chorus. We try and train on every single email and call. We know the person that we're calling. So I want you to use, call into me and use the premise that you saw my profile line and that my profile line says hiring the right people is just as important as developing them. So without further ado, are you ready for the live role play?
Ready.
Okay, so we're gonna do how to counter any shallow objection to turn a crappy conversation into a meeting just like that.
Whoa, how'd you get over there?
I don't know. At any rate, let's role play.
All right.
So you ring me.
Yes. All right, so ring ring.
This is Becc.
Hey Becc, this is Karina calling on a recording line from chorus.ai. How have you been?
I've been well, Karina. How are you?
Good, thanks for asking. So Becc, the reason for my outreach is I came across your LinkedIn profile and I saw that your profile line says that hiring the right people is just as important as developing them. And I was curious to know if you've come across Chorus before.
Hey, I haven't, but hey, Karina, I'm actually running into a meeting, so can you just send me an email?
Can I level with you?
Yeah, sure.
I feel like I've been hearing that a lot lately, and I have a feeling that's just you saying, go away, you annoying sales rep. Did I get that right?
You actually did get that right. Caught.
No, I totally get it. You know, if I was in your shoes, I'd probably do the same thing. You probably get a lot of cold calls on your daily, on a daily basis. But how about this? You give me the next 30 seconds for me to give you my best dog and pony show to tell you who Chorus is and why I think we might be a good fit for you and your team. And at the end of those 30 seconds, you can tell me whether or not it makes sense to continue the conversation from there. Fair?
Fair.
All right.
That was awesome. So in review, the 3 parts to any kind of shallow objection are pattern interrupt, elephant in the room, empathy, and an upfront contract. So to counter any shallow objection, you need to bust through that old school buyer-seller dance and counter how the wonderful Karina Erickson did just then. So thanks everyone for watching and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.